Hello, everyone. I'm Mr. E.
And I am Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we are the Duality of Men. Why does our aristocracy hate both themselves and our society? That is the question we are working with today.
Yeah, it's a term I came up with a couple streams ago, Civic Masochism, and it's really used to describe the idea that the civilization that we belong to deserves to suffer for a variety of reasons. None of them valid, but
For the
let's get
sins
into it.
of the imagined history we made up 5 minutes ago.
Uh, for um, for an example of civic nationalism that I think a lot of people would understand. One example is the Germans still feeling the need to flagellate themselves due to the atrocities of their 20th mid-century forebears.
Yeah, of evil mustache painter man.
Yeah,
Yeah, the das White Guilt or
yeah,
das
they're
White
still
Guilten.
yeah they are still punishing themselves over that, which
And punishing the rest of Europe while they're at it because it was Angela Merkel's idea to open the floodgates of Islamic migration. Thanks, Frau
which
Merkel.
it's the idea that because your nation may have done some bad things in the past, you should not have pride in it today, and also you need to be overly charitable, overly sympathetic, and overly
You're almost
uh,
obliged to martyr yourself over it.
yes, you have to basically lay down and accept whatever basically terrible things happen to you because your suffering is basically penance for what happened in the past, which is
Spe-
absolutely freaking ridiculous. And not
Speaking of,
only that, but
sorry,
you know,
go ahead.
this is the only country we have. If we let this one get destroyed, we're not getting another one. And yet we might break up into smaller states, but we're going to be weaker. Your quality of life is going to decrease. And the enemies that would love to see America destroyed and then take advantage would absolutely support this.
I mean, the fundamentalist Islamists literally refer to the USA as, quote, the Great Satan, unquote. And Lord knows that Xi Jinping and Putin would love to split the U.S. right up the middle and gobble it up like candy. Which, speaking of the whole self-induced, martyrdom is the only good option approach. Did you hear about the guy who set himself on fire and died screaming "Free Palestine" over and over?
Oh, that lunatic. Oh yeah, I heard of that.
The
Which
the constantly on the terminally online, literally constantly posting Antifa style anarcho communist.
yeah, that person is just insane. And quite frankly, if you're gonna give me this advice and then being crazy enough to set yourself on fire, I'm less inclined to actually listen to anything you've ever
Well,
said.
see, but here's the thing. I don't think he was insane because everything he did
He
and
immolated
said was
himself.
consistent with no, but it was consistent within his principles. His principles just happened to be foobar. But there's scant little difference between that and Gandhi starving himself or something akin to that. My point is that it is very much cases like that that are the natural end result of this kind of, as you put it, civic masochism. Or honestly, we could probably also tie this back to Yuri Bezmenov's demoralization to some degree.
Yes, I think we could. But I would say that the difference between Gandhi and this guy is that Gandhi, his was a relatively slow process, giving giving him the opportunity to, if things did
Abort.
change,
Yeah.
he would not have to, starve himself to death. Whereas this guy chose instant death, not even living to see
Well,
whether
yeah,
or not
not
his
even
actions
instant
had
death.
any.
He burnt himself to a crisp. But my point is that I don't attribute that to insanity. I attribute that to what Jordan Peterson would call ideological possession. There was no human left by the time he got to that point. There was only the ideology. He was possessed by the demon of his own thoughts, basically.
Yes, he basically became a cell in the organism of his ideology.
Yeah.
And one
The
cell
the,
dying isn't that big of a deal.
the one man Antifa crusade.
Yeah, you know.
Which, on the one hand, I respect his commitment to his ideology. You certainly can't accuse him of being a grifter or an opportunist, because he certainly put his life on the line and put his money where his mouth was. It's just it's a shame that he martyred himself over anarcho-communist Antifa style bullshit instead of like surviving and or um dying for something I would like. It's cruel to say that he was martyring himself for the wrong ideology, but anarcho-communism of the brand preached by Antifa and acted upon by Antifa is, I'm sorry, just not worth it, because it's founded on deconstructive critical theory and nihilism.
I mean, there's a difference between dauntless courage and blinding stupidity, and I feel like this guy definitely crossed that line because
Or
yeah, he
or
believed in what he
again, cult
believed
like
in.
ideological possession.
Yeah, because like you want this to accomplish, getting getting a ceasefire in the war in the Middle East. Okay, did you think this was actually accomplish that?
Because the Islamists are laughing at him for basically being like the jokes on like Muslim Twitter, for example, are basically, well, he better get used to that sensation of being on fire because he's damned to hell for being a kafir.
Yeah, yeah, he sacrificed his life for them. They don't give a fuck about this guy.
And and you would think that this guy of all guys would get the George Floyd treatment from the social justice types, the Antifa types, but even they are laughing at him, and it's just like, wait, you will burn cities to the ground for someone who, as far as we know, had never even heard of Black Lives Matter, who happened to die as a result of police violence, and yet the
Provided he didn't
guy,
die of an overdose.
the, yeah, the guy literally sets himself on fire for the glory of Antifa style anarcho communism, and all you can go is, that was dumb. But like,
Well,
by
here's
the
the thing,
it,
Dalton. If they actually did embrace this guy and herald him as some sort of hero, the common man would look at them and lose. Then they would lose any chance that they possibly have
right,
of
but
convincing the average person.
at least it would be a proportional response. At least it would be a consistent reaction. At least this time, when they George Floyd the shit out of civilization, it would make some kind of sense, because the person who they were lionizing actually was a proponent of the ideology and actually did martyr himself on the grounds of the ideology.
All right, so getting back to defining civic masochism, these people hate their own countries, and these would be the type of people who are, say, if they're white and will say that, oh, like, white people will be a minority, you know population in the United States, and then actually be cheering that on. Like, look, I'm black, I don't give a damn one way or the other, but the fact that you're white and you actually see this as some sort of good thing is just freaking weird.
In the same way as if black people literally started Chad Yesing to white supremacist talking points, you would look at them askance and go, are you okay in the head?
Yeah, these people hate what they are, and then by extension hate, the society that they're a part of.
Because it created them, and they resent, they resent they essentially almost, and I'm going to be a little bit provocative in my phrasing here, but they essentially almost view themselves as walking abortions, and so they blame society for giving rise to them in the first place.
Yeah, I also feel like, because they are, railing against the, sins of the past, that somehow makes them moral without actually having to behave like a moral person or do moral things in situations in the present.
Again, it's the perpetual rebel mentality of we are the underdog, we are the oppressed, we are the noble freedom fighters, and therefore we get to engage in guerrilla tactics, no matter how much backing we have of the establishment and the essential tyranny of normality.
Yes, they pretend to be the underdog, and then go to like absolutely ridiculous lengths to degrade themselves. Like I remember years ago, I saw like a group of white people who were, you know, in order to somehow make themselves feel better about you know slavery in the United States, they actually walked around with the kind of like collars that slaves used to
Yeah.
wear so that they were unable to run away. And I'm like saying, okay, you can hate slavery, but why the fuck would you do this to yourself?
Well, and the more commonplace version of that is the phrase "we have nothing to lose but our chains," to which, of course, the natural on the ground response is, "What fucking chains, you upper middle class gated community living suburban twat with daddy's trust
Yeah,
fund."
and the worst part, Doden, is that they did this to kids too.
Hmm.
Like that's just it's just absolutely disgusts me. These people will burn down. They will burn down their own country just so that amidst the ashes they could finally be free of their internal guilt.
Well, that's why I brought up the person who immolated himself, because there is at least a little bit of respect that I will give him. Is one, he was acting thoroughly in accordance with his ideology, and he was not, like, there was no grift in him. He was he was the most genuine of all the true believers. But that is the natural end result of someone who genuinely does take these kind of ideals to its logical conclusion. And the other end of the spectrum are the Voschites who cocoon themselves in so many layers of academic woo, the Vosches and the Hassan Pikers, that not only are they never going to follow that person down the path of self-immolation, even though it would be consistent with their ideology, they're going to come up with ever more abstractified woo as to why they shouldn't do that, why they have to stay in, and why they have to stay, quote unquote, in the fight.
Yeah. But the thing is, the things they do, the things they advocate for, have inevitable consequences. None of which
Yeah,
are good,
logic is a
because
son of a bitch, unfortunately.
yeah,
Logic is a
because
cruel
as you
mistress. It gives leeway for no man or woman.
yeah, because as you mentioned before, Angela Merkel, who is a German civic masochist, caused the migrant crisis, which, as I'm sure you know, created a metric fuck ton of problems, including
Yeah.
increased crime, increased sexual assault, just destabilization of areas, new gangs, grenade attacks, acid attacks, just
And people
chaos
people
and
people
destruction.
wonder why men in general are more and more constantly thinking of the Roman Empire, because this reminds me a lot of the oh hello Visigoths, let us give you military training so you can defend our borders so we don't have to. Oh no, they used that military training to end the empire. Who could have seen this coming?
Speaking of such things, did you know that there was a bill being proposed in Congress about allowing illegal migrants to earn citizenship by joining the U.S. military? It's literally just the fall of the Roman Empire.
But I I don't mean to be an asshole, but again, it's not like we don't have the historical record. Like, it's not like we don't know that this is literally to the letter exactly how Rome fucked itself. Like, god damn it. Hello, Gauls. Let's give you military training so that you can defend our borders for us and we can be lazy so we don't have to. Oh no, they're turning that military training on us and it's resulting in the end of the empire. Who could have seen this coming? God damn it.
The Roman Empire lasted for a couple centuries. I think we're speed running this.
Yeah, they lasted almost a millennia if you throw in the Roman Republic as well. So yeah, we were coming up on what, 350 or years thereabouts. Yeah, unfortunate.
And these are the kind of people that I don't forget where it was, but I think it was Sweden, where a girl was sexually assaulted by a migrant and then didn't go to the police because she was afraid he would get deported. Like, you, these
Again,
people
I'm reminded of Yuri
are
Bezmenov.
sick.
I,
Like,
I,
just
I'm
they
I'm
should
reminded of
not be
Yuri
allowed
Bezmenov
to wander the
demoralization.
streets because clearly they are incapable of properly taking care of themselves, let alone the freaking nation.
Well, it's because of this. It's because of this like self-sacrificial streak in so many people's morality. That's why I'm so anal retentively careful about over embracing agape. To call back to what we talked about the week of Valentine's Day, because once you convince yourself that self-sacrifice is the highest form of morality and that any self-serving definition of love that is in any way transactional is a perverted or lesser version of that, then you do wind up in the situation where the most noble thing you can do is to be a martyr to whatever abstract, high-minded woo your society happens to fill you with.
I feel it's also a matter of the fact that these people appear to believe in the inherent good nature of people, which is absolutely incorrect.
Yeah, the Rousseau instinct of, well, everything was wonderful and utopian until society came along and restricted everything. Yeah, no, we as humans created society because we as humans like it that way. Fuck off.
Yeah, it basic. The only way, as we are currently finding out in every major city in America, that you can have a peaceful society with any semblance of law and order is if that law and order is actually enforced and violators punished.
And
Because when
it
they're not,
means something to the people in the civilization.
yes, because here's the thing: people will always take the path of least resistance. And if you allow criminality to be the path of least resistance, people are just going to flood towards it.
Well, and even more so if you create a moral structure that says we were wrong to oppress you by allowing you or forcing you to abstain from this originally. Again, the whole self-interest is in and of itself a moral evil impulse that are like Nietzsche was a odd duck about a lot of things, but one of the things I think he may have been right about is the whole master morality versus slave morality. At least on some level, I think he was right about that. I think that this self-sacrifice is the ultimate moral good thing we have, and therefore self-interest is a lower, baser, animalistic impulse that we have, is a huge part of the problem. Because once you get it in your head that self-sacrifice for the abstract moral system, or sacrifice for the other, sacrifice for the less fortunate, sacrifice for the oppressed, is the ultimate good, and that self-interest is a sign of, malignant, demonic, um, transactional abuse, then you basically wind up deprogramming yourself of any self-interest for the greater good. And unsurprisingly, those are the people who wind up getting the please face the wall treatment.
Yeah, the thing is, like, most people aren't like the guy that torched himself. Most people will only support these things while it's still very comfortable for them to do so. But when things get really tough, as we're seeing in a lot of major cities, they flip very quickly. There's a lot of sentiment now in a lot of these, liberal cities about, being anti-immigration, because now it's actually starting to affect them and where they live. When it was all down in Texas, none of them cared. But
Oh,
now that
curse
it's
you,
actually been,
consequences of my own actions and or ideals.
yeah, these people voted to become like sanctuary, cities and states without ever having to actually believe that they would, have to live up to it.
Yeah, they begged to be the martyr, and then once the martyrdom started, it's like, what are you doing? I didn't want this. No, you did. You just didn't realize that that's what you were asking for. Again, when you frame self-interest as a moral evil and self-sacrifice as the ultimate moral good, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to have to sacrifice your self-interest on the altar of the higher good, and that's going to result in a please face the wall situation.
And I don't know if you've heard, but there was a murder done in Georgia where this young 20 something nursing student was murdered by, I believe, a Venezuelan migrant that came in illegally. And the city she was living in was a sanctuary city. And the prevailing theory is that this guy tried to sexually assault her and then she fought back, so he just killed her.
Well, damn.
Yeah, and you know what the mayor said while he was giving a press conference about the murder?
I cannot even imagine.
Well, this is really all Donald Trump's fault. The language that he used when talking about illegal migrants was really very harsh, and we have to consider the humanity of these people and really do our best to treat them with respect. And I swear to God, I wanted to slap this man through the screen.
All the while believing that every one of our ancestors was an irredeemable, immoral monster, and that we should flagellate ourselves with shame at every possible convenience.
There is some good news for somebody else, though.
Uh,
I don't know if you've seen the reports, but Venezuela's crime has dropped to its lowest point in 22 years.
how's that?
I'll give you three guesses.
Malayism is spreading? Please?
No, it's less that Malayism is spreading, and more like all their bad guys are coming here.
God damn it.
Yeah, because if there's a place that will gladly accept you, whether or not you're a criminal or not, and won't bother to check, and you're wanted for
And even if they
crimes,
know you are, they'll just frame you as Aladdin, basically, the poor put upon oppressed criminal who's a criminal because he had to be somehow.
yeah,
Or
and
that
they won't
law
see.
and order itself is inherently destructive or immoral or some shit.
Yeah, and they won't send you back. So like, the criminals have every incentive to leave their countries and come to the United States. And I think one of the worst things, speaking of civic massacres, are the American NGOs who fund these trips. Like, how are we not investing these people and throwing everyone in jail?
Because they're doing so with the veneer of morality around them. They're C.S. Lewis's moral busybodies who, in the pursuit of heaven, will make a hell of earth.
Like, they are basically literally engaging in human trafficking and should be freaking arrested.
But they're doing it for the greater good, you see, and that makes it different somehow because abstraction trumps practicality or reality when it's convenient.
I mean, if I steal, to put food on the table, they're still gonna throw my ass in jail.
Yeah, but you're not part of the ideology, you see. If you do so while shouting Black Lives Matter, then you get a parade. But until that point, then you get the bullet too along with the rest of us heretics.
So we have increased crime, and not only that, our government is paying for these people out, you know, absolutely ridiculous, rates of expenditures. I believe in New York, the mayor was going to give them $10,000 on a prepaid debit card.
Um if I go to New York, will I get that treatment? No? Why not?
That
Typically you typically you reserve those sorts of benefits for your actual legitimate citizenry who,
no, you're an American. Why would American politicians help you?
well, in a sane world, that's sort of why countries and states are allowed to exist. That's sort of the contract that everyone implicitly signs with their government in a sane world. But we don't live in a sane world. We live in the most absurd of all possible timelines. Uh,
Yeah. So the government is spending exorbitant amounts of money, to fund these criminals, and
all the
that's
while, their home
obviously,
infrastructure becomes increasingly more dilapidated, and we still haven't fixed Flint, Michigan, now have we?
yeah, that's true. And also, you know, speaking of dilapidating infrastructure, you know how they're giving a lot of these people hotel rooms,
Hmm.
putting them up. Well, I saw a report like a few months ago from a woman named Savannah Hernandez. A lot of these hotels are just getting absolutely destroyed and are becoming unusable. Like there was one hotel that was so thoroughly, ruined by the migrant inhabitants, they just had to shut down, like permanently.
And mind you, it's not like they were sending them to cheap hotels to begin with. Most of them got sent to like 3-star and above hotels. They were literally treated better than most of us could ever afford, and yet somehow we owe it to them because of Das White Gilton. Just
So,
uh,
all this expense is, affecting our economy. And I'm sure you've, seen the way that prices are going. It's getting harder for the average person to get food on the table. Not only that, but a lot of these people coming in, if they do become legal migrants, which they shouldn't, they should be, punted back across the border. But if they do, guess what? They're going to be competing for housing, which is going to drive the price of housing back up. And the younger generation, like the millennial Gen Z, they can't afford to buy houses.
let those who can afford to live with someone other than their family cast the first stone. Ahem. Kind of. God damn it. And mind you, speaking of civic masochism, it surely doesn't help that our entire like governmental system is populated by people who are above retirement age. Like more than 50% of our government is over retirement age, and of that 50%, it's the most important positions that they're in, and the people who might be with it enough or in touch with society enough to be actually useful in government positions, they're shunted off to the redundant positions and the unnecessary positions. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, our president looks like a cross between the Crypt Keeper and the main character of and the titular character of Weekend at Bernie's. So, like,
No,
maybe
Bernie had more charisma.
yeah, maybe it is the fact that maybe it is the fact that the majority of people expressing this kind of white guilt maybe actually were around during like segregation and shit. Maybe they personally have something to feel guilty for. But you know what? It has been like 70 years since segregation was a thing. Maybe we can lay down the white guilt eventually. But no, you can't convince people like Pelosi or Biden or Schumer of that because they were around during that and probably were on the wrong side of the civil rights movement, if we're being entirely honest. Maybe that's
It's
why
full of
this whole last war syndrome keeps popping up, where they're constantly trying to make amends for shit that hasn't been relevant for 70 years.
as far as people like Pelosi, and Biden and Schumer goes. I genuinely don't believe that they care. I think for them it's just a means to, exercise, power and, gain support. But I feel like our government should not be run by people who are too old to actually live with the consequences of their decisions.
Well, that, but also there's a reason why we instituted a retirement age to begin with. Not only is it cruel to force septuagenarians, octogenarians, and nonagenarians to work themselves into a grave, it's also a massive hindrance on infrastructure because when everyone running an infrastructure is a, septuagenarian or above, or all the people in important positions are septuagenarians or above, it's very easy for that institution to become incredibly dilapidated, incredibly overly bureaucratic, and out of touch as shit. Not to mention the whole every general wants to win the last war they fought in thing, and most of these septuagenarians or above weren't like they haven't been activists for 70 years, and so they constantly try to treat every new problem like it's the same problem that they dealt with when they were you know Berkeley protesters in the 60s. Meanwhile, Antifa is burning down civilization, but it's people like Gamergate and Comicsgate and the Phantom Menace that they fearmonger over instead.
Like one of the person people that perfectly exemplifies the problem with octogenarians in power is Dianne Feinstein, the senator from California, and she this woman died in office. She was 90 years old. Like
Again, not only is it simply bad for sheer being in touch with the electorate and efficiency, it's also cruel to these people. Like, there's a reason why we send people that old to nursing homes so that they can, at least in theory, enjoy their golden years in peace. God damn it!
look, there, there was no way this woman at 90 was capable of actually exercising to any sort of proficiency the duties and responsibilities of a U.S. senator. No, like, she would literally just get wheeled in, you know, told to vote for this, and then get wheeled out. Like she should have been put in retirement a long time ago. And like I don't know if it was just the establishment wanting to keep somebody with name recognition in place so they could keep that seat, or if it was just like a demented, obsessive desire for power that she just would not let go. But whatever it was, it's freaking wrong, and we need to put in a retirement age for politicians. Unfortunately, the only way to do that would be for the politicians to vote on it, and they're never going to give up power themselves willingly. Pelosi is an example of that.
Well, that, and there's also this ethos behind their. They look at the younger generations and go, "We have to be the adults in the room because these people, referencing millennials or Zoomers, could never possibly be expected to run the world like it should be run," and blah. And again, speaking of the civic masochism thing and the gerontocracy thing, they're so addicted to norms that have basically lasted for the last 100 years that they could never. Not only would they never give up the norms that have run society for the last 100 years, but they physically are incapable of conceiving of anything outside of the norm being good or worth instituting. No wonder, no wonder they're so addicted to bureaucracy and institutional power. If they believe that literally everyone born, in the 80s is too much of a maverick child to run civilization, then they probably, on some level, consider it their duty to remain in power and alive for as long as they can, so that the status quo and the norms and the establishment can be maintained. They wouldn't even dare to conceive that the norms and the establishment could ever be the problem for anything.
Yeah, but the establishment is awful. Everybody recognizes on the left and the right that the establishment is awful. The only difference is what to do about it.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
quote unquote adults are back in the room right now. Guess what? Everything's on fire. Meanwhile, under the outsider maverick that was Donald Trump, things were actually looking good.
Yeah. But and therein lies the issue, and part of it might just be a simple addiction to this has been the norm since before the First World War, so it must be correct. There could never possibly be a way to improve it.
Just look at the recent pseudo political revolutions in El Salvador and
Argentina.
Argentina. Yeah, like you can fix the problems in your country. The only problem is that none of the people in power have the actual desire to fix it.
Well,
Because this is
because
one of the
they're
major
only
things in politics is that they need these issues to get paid on to get elected. If they actually fixed it, then they wouldn't have anything to rally people around them to elect them.
well, even outside of that, very often their solutions are just the thing that caused the problem in the first place, the norm that begat the problem in the first place. And you
Yeah.
can't solve a problem if your only solution to the problem was let's norm an establishment and Overton window even harder, even more ideologically, hysterically, and even more overtly.
Yes, we'll
It,
lower the crime rate by legalizing the crime.
and meanwhile they get reactionarily hypersensitive about how could anyone possibly choose populists and libertarians over us, because and the answer of course is because to most people the answer is a very simple: literally anyone but the establishment, literally anyone but the normative institutions, literally anyone but the Overton window at this point. It's like it's similar to what happened with the Trump v Hillary issue. The issue was not people don't like women or people don't like the idea of a woman politician. It's people specifically hated Hillary Clinton and the establishment order that she represented. And the more moral histrionic moral grandstanding that the establishment does against Trump, rather than ever countering him on anything substantive, the more people just go, well, if the establishment hates him so much, he must be the guy. He must be the right choice to smash it with. Because again, at this point, it's literally anyone but the establishment, motherfucker.
Like, I seriously worry about this. Well, the country who will these people are willing to burn down the future to make today last just a little bit longer.
Or to make amends for a past that they barely even remember anymore, or wasn't true to begin with. Never forget, speaking of getting back to our men's rights roots here, that Joe Biden was the person who repealed the Family Violence Prevention and Services Act in favor of the Violence Against Women Act. So there's that. It's not. Speaking of parts of the establishment narrative that they will not give up no matter what they do. Their moral compass for the last 100 years has been very heavily reliant on feminism, very reliant on post post Marx neo Hegelianism, been reliant on critical theory, been reliant on the Frankfurt School mentality, etc., and so on. Things fundamentally have not changed policy or structure wise since the First World War. Is it any wonder that that paradigm has become ancient and dilapidated and not fit for purpose, given that it's lasted for literally more than a human lifetime, and the people in power are at this point closing in on nonagenarians?
And like, you know, despite whatever far leftists might say about the atomized individual citizen unit, I families are the backbone of a civilization. They just are. And our government has, over the past 40 years, no, probably beyond that, like 50 years, done everything in its power to just like rip apart the American family. And now we have articles in the paper about why don't men want to get married? Why aren't they forming families? Like, have you seen the state of the marriage laws in this country? Like,
Because
I
it's a
know,
raw deal, and everyone knows it's a raw deal. Just like they histrionically panic over, why does everyone seemingly hate the establishment? Don't they realize we're the moral superiors of everyone? Yeah, no. The fact that all you can do is morally and like get histrionically morally verklempt about shit is part of the problem. And it would only work if you actually had the moral high ground, and you simply will not countenance the idea that you don't have the moral high ground anymore, if ever you did in the first place.
like, and I see a lot of conservative pundits, a lot of whom I actually like talking about you know forget about the laws, forget about um you know what society tells you. You should get married. It Marriage is a good thing, and it you know fills you a purpose. And I'm like, I agree. I agree that marriage is a good thing. But have you seen the state of it today?
Is
Like
it
I want,
plausible?
yeah, like I would very much like to find a good woman, settle down with you to raise some kids. But I'm also
Are
a
you going to do
left-leaning human
anything to
being.
make that plausible at any point,
Yeah,
guys?
you're like like the young men of society are saying, yeah, we want to, but we also see guys out here getting freaking annihilated.
Yeah, the only options are become an incel or become Andrew freaking Tate. Those are the only acceptable extremes at this point.
Yeah, so look, you have given men no reason to, care about, the country they live in, and that's also very much reflective in, the military recruitment numbers. Nobody wants to fight for this country.
And yeah, and when you do remember, oh hey, we probably should do something to convince men to do this, do you treat men like human beings? Do you treat them like someone who needs to be convinced to do what you want them to do? No. The only option most of the time when we as a society want men to do things that they're not currently doing is, oh, we'll just shame them into submission again every time. It's never maybe we should treat men like human beings. It's never maybe we should treat men like agents who need to be convinced to do things we want them to do. It's always, if men aren't doing the thing we want them to do, just shame them harder until they finally decide to knuckle under and comply with what we want them to do.
Yeah, but here's the thing: it's not going to work because men have nothing. Given the state of politics and the economy, they're going to have nothing. Like they can't. Like women don't want to date them because a lot of women really only want to date, rich people who can provide them with a lifestyle. And you've given them literally no reason to what to do for the country. Like literally, the only thing men have right now is their lives, and you want us to sacrifice that? Fuck off.
Yeah, in fact, that's the only way you can be moral as a man in today's day and age is if you do knuckle under and do what society expects of you, TM, for no benefit of your own. Again, back to the thing I was saying earlier about at least a significant portion of this problem is the whole self-sacrifice is the only way to be moral and self-interest is inherently of the devil. You can only get away with saying that so long before people eventually stop and ask, okay, I know you essentially want to shame me into submission, but what if I say no and go with my own self-interest instead? And the only approach to that from any side of the issue seems to be if you try to be self-interested, if you try to have a backbone, if you try to have self-respect, we will shame you until that self-respect is broken.
Yeah,
And then when people get sick of that and opt out, they go, "Where are you going? How dare you? How dare you opt out of the situation where your only options are to be shamed into submission or get nothing?"
yeah. The thing is, like, even if you are someone who is patriotic, they'll crap on you for being proud of your country due to all the things in the past that they hate, and then still ask you to fight for your country.
Well, that and also the same thing goes for the defund the police thing. Remember how frequently they shadow over, my thin blue line is a fascist symbol. Police is, Policing is fascist, blah blah blah. And then they were surprised when they tried the defund the police option, and a bunch of police just were like, "Okay, we're not getting any payment for the shit we're doing, or very little, and we're also getting morally shit on every time we do anything. So opt out." And then do they turn around and go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you guys were human. We probably should incentivize you to do your jobs." No, it's we're going to morally shame you for not doing your jobs. It's literally we will shame you if you do your job. We will also shame you if you abstain from doing your job, and there will be no there. It's all stick, no carrot. In fact, you're immoral for asking for there to be a carrot along with the stick half the time.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like if things don't improve, like if we can't turn things around, politically and economically, like the country's just gonna break apart. Because what people are gonna do is they're going to move to like states that that do offer them something and have cultures that they resonate with, and then the country's just gonna break apart.
And the sad thing is, it's not even just contained to the US. That's going to happen to literally every country sooner or later.
Yeah,
Because
like the
the Western countries are kamikazing themselves, and the non Western countries are totalitarian shitholes that are self destructive to the point of collapse. So it's which flavor of collapse do you want? Do you want the Western incompetence um flavored collapse with a side of moral shaming, or do you want the totalitarian form of collapse where you'll be abjectly miserable and then die, and then your entire civilization will fuck off?
yeah, it's like the EU was a mistake, Canada was a mistake, and honestly, like I feel like the moment the EU tried to dictate other people's immigration policy is the moment the EU should have been broken up immediately.
I mean, hell, at this point, I'm willing to go so far as maybe the entire UN was a fucking mistake.
Oh, definitely.
And we know that post-Soviet Russia was a mistake, and the natural impulse of fuck the CCP also springs to mind. So, is is there a civilization on this earth that is actually worth fighting for anymore? Again, do you want your societal collapse to be flavored with moral incompetence and a side of shaming, or do you want your societal collapse to be flavored with totalitarian thought policing, dehumanization, and misanthropy? It's like choosing between arsenic and cyanide, and there are no other options.
Oh, maybe hemlock would be an option.
I mean, yeah. At this point, the Socrates method is the only is the only choice. But of course, every time society creates a Socrates, they're the devil because we say so. Because corruption of the youth, derp.
Yeah. Another big problem is the media, the quote unquote fourth estate. Like, we can only have a nation, you know, built upon the people electing their leaders, where the people are actually, you know, adequately
Informed.
informed.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, like, first of all, the government, through the Department of Education, has gone out of its way to make sure that people are dumb,
Yeah.
and
The
the
original
media don't.
education itself is bullshit, and then the media that results from that education is also bullshit. And
Yeah,
meanwhile,
like,
if you find a source of media or a source of education outside of those frameworks, you're the devil.
yeah. Then also we have technology companies who, like the media, are hand in hand with the politicians and are actively trying to skew information one particular way. Did you see that report on Google's search bias?
The thing with the what is it, Gemini AI and its
Well, no,
diversification.
no, not even that, but like Google's search results have a built-in left-wing bias, where that it will give results from left-wing and left-center sources more credibility and more results um than right of center or right wing sources.
And that's on top of the just generic establishment bias that they have to begin with.
Yeah, so it's funneling people towards left wing sources, which will obviously give a left wing view of things. And like, if you've been paying to the media since the Joe Biden presidency, you know that they cannot be trusted, because the amount of spinning and gaslighting to try and prop up this decrepit old fool is just absolutely ridiculous. Like,
While
you could.
civilization outprices and burns down around him. Meanwhile, compare the oppositional nature that the media had to Trump when it was Trump's presidency, and compare the absolute fawning ass coverage that is the media coverage under the Biden presidency. And
There's an
meanwhile,
article.
even in the independent media sphere, you have people like David Pakman, who has the statistics jammed so far up his ass he wouldn't know a material reality if it beat him over the head.
Let's see. There was uh, a report on CNN. I can't find the actual one, so uh, I'm using a link on Fox News. It says, hold on, let me see. See, CNN reported that there was little evidence linking illegal immigration and crime after a Venezuelan migrant was charged in connection with the murder of a 22-year-old Georgia nursing student. Like, anybody with eyes and two brain cells to rub together to create a charge would be able to see that there was a clear link between migrants and crime.
Gee, when you import people from the third world, they bring third world morality and mentalities with them. Who could have guessed? Everyone with an understanding of what the third world means, you moron. It's like when we import a bunch of Islamic migrants, they bring a bunch of fundamentalist Islam with them. Who could have guessed?
Like,
Everyone who knows what those words mean, you moron.
this isn't even counting weeks ago when an illegal immigrant was charged with killing a mother and her child after his I think fifth DUI.
Uh, and of course the famous it's only radicalization when it's against our framework. You can be as radical as you want from inside our framework. That's why the establishment props up Antifa and lionizes the George Floyd syndrome and everything. But if you're radicalized to the establishment narrative, like the guy who self-immolated recently, um, at most we can say he was misguided, and more likely people like that are more than likely going to get lionized by both the mainstream and the activist paradigm, because it only counts as radicalization when it's against us. There's no such thing as radicalization inside our framework, apparently.
The only small ray of hope is that it's literally become so bad that not a single person in the country is capable of ignoring it any longer. Like, and I swear to God,
Except David Pacman.
If these people win in 2024, I literally will not believe it. It's
Yeah,
not that I
no,
don't. It's not that I just wouldn't be willing to accept it. It's just that I would literally not be able to believe it.
again, and this is my problem with David Pacman. It's were you going to believe my statistics or your lying eyes, or your lying wallet?
And that's the thing that's recently, come out. Like a lot of these, political parties, and groups, they will have like think tanks and groups that will go out and do studies to justify their political positions. Like, and they will use the most bullshit methodology, small sample size, oversampling one area. So you really have to look at where it's coming from. You can't just
And
say,
then
"Oh,
and
here's
then
a study that
people
proves this."
and then people like David Pacman will accept the statistics as gospel. And again, I know a guy who I keep on my Facebook just to argue with him sometimes, and he will, whenever he is losing an argument, he will data spam. He will statistic spam. But if you simply go through the process of, okay, let's actually examine that data, and I can tell you where that data is going wrong, where that data set is poorly sampled, and so on. Or he'll cite a bunch of news stories, and then I'll be like, okay, I accept your source, but you also need to be aware that that source is biased because of this framework and that framework and these ideological presuppositions and so on. He will then accuse me of denying the data, or trying to gaslight him, or um, be spouting misinformation, by simply asking him to be intellectually honest and being willing to reframe or recontextualize the data. But no, with people like this guy on my Facebook, or people like David Pacman, not only is the data sacrosanct in that you cannot deny it, you also can't ever look at the man behind the curtain and examine, okay, are those statistics actually accurate to something resembling reality, or are they biased in their sampling and or structure and or slant? Because if you do that, then you're gaslighting, or you're trying to force an ideology. Never mind that you point out to them that they're forcing an idea, or that the statistics themselves were already slanted in an ideological direction, and they will burst into flames screaming, my ideology isn't an ideology, my ideology is just the truth.
Yeah,
Come
and
on.
this works very well with the uneducated public who are going to see these things and think that it's made by people with who are just smarter than them and accept it. And this is
Yeah,
like,
it's institutionalized Dunning-Kruger effect. Intelligence is basically our society's equivalent of sacredness.
or that and
Intelligence works in mysterious
qualifications.
ways. Derp.
that and titles and qualifications, because I'm sure you've seen the video of, they were doing like an IQ test, and there was this girl who, had a doctorate and worked for a medical company, and then there was this guy who was just like, a Marine. He didn't go to college.
Was
And
that Jubilee? Is that the
uh,
video you mean?
I believe so. I don't remember the source, but like I just said that this woman was like so arrogant about her, education
And
and
they
job
ranked
titles.
each other. They ranked each other based on intelligence, and they assumed that because the Marine had a trade school degree instead of a college degree, he must be unintelligent. And then they took the IQ test, and it turned out that um the the uh the base guy was either the highest intelligence or the second highest, and meanwhile the the doctoral candidate was an absolute midwit.
Yeah, she was dead last, and the Marine guy was the second highest after the Asian guy, which is just cheating in my opinion.
Well, if the slanted eye is fit, then you must wear them, I suppose. But yeah, the whole intellectualism is self referential, or the whole scientism thing. Well, the science says treating science like a goddamn deity. And not only must you treat those things like an authority, you can't even examine them without being treated like a fucking flat earther. It's goddamn ridiculous.
So I think one of the ways that we can maybe be able to fix this is to, first reelect Donald Trump in this upcoming election, so that he could do a lot of work of, like Javier Milei, and just ripping apart the establishment, which I hope he does. Okay.
I
Did
I,
you
I,
see that?
I think the establishment has fucked with him enough that when he gets back in, I'm not even saying if, it's a when. It is a when now. When he gets back in, he's gonna be in the Malay ballpark probably.
Did you see that Milei managed to it? Like, it's been less than a year since his election, right?
Hmm.
Did you see that he managed to balance Argentina's budget by just ripping away all of the worthless crap?
Bureaucratic bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, and so now they have a positive budget. Meanwhile, we're over here like spending trillions that we don't have on other people's problems.
And barely being able to afford a average McDonald's meal. It's god damn it.
I think one of
Meanwhile,
the
David Pacman is just screaming, "But my statistics." Never mind if those statistics fail to map onto reality, but whatever.
So, do you have any final words about, civic masochism and the people who would destroy our own country to assuage their own guilt?
You know, Cato the Elder had a famous phrase, "Carthage delenda est," um, because he was concerned about the growth of Carthage, and he thought that Carthage must be destroyed. That's what that means. I am to the point where I am at the phrase "decorum delenda est." The establishment and or norms must be destroyed. That's where I'm at. Decorum delenda est. Fuck decorum. It is the problem at this point.
And I'm at the point where I will spend the remainder of my life, and hopefully, you know, convince any future progeny that I might have to just array themselves against these people, because the nation cannot stand with these people in charge. It just can't. It will. If these people remain in power, the collapse is not a matter of if, but when.
And that when is getting closer by the frickin' minute.
Yeah. Everybody, I've been Mr. E.
I have been Dalton Moore, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Man. Cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.